Wonder this, if you will. From what country would you really like to know the folklore, myths and fairy tales? For me personally, it was Dutch folklore, and as it is for most, it was really unknown. Let me welcome and take you on this exciting journey into the abyss. Sit back and enjoy this introduction to Low Country Folklore 101, where stories once forgotten feel almost as part of a culture has disappeared or died out for all time. And we believe it's high time to bring them back to the surface and into the light. While many other folklore is known to most people, especially with an interest in the subject or that it's taught in schools, however, Dutch folklore or Low Country folklore as you will, it also includes from Belgium and Luxembourg, is relatively unknown to the wider audience. You may find it, at least if you try to deep search for it. Still, one may face many challenges trying to find information about those subjects, even though writers still try to retell the accounts in new books. It seems that even most Dutch people don't care or they've forgotten that the Dutch used to have this great tradition of sharing stories. If it was in the local inn, around family or around the fire, even if it was to scare the children into submission. Also, it was used to unite a village or a populace into having a common enemy, even if it seemed to be an impossible one or an invisible one. These stories that were created in the past and retold and have been mostly lost to the wider audience. When they hear these stories, the reaction of most people is, "I never heard of that," or the response is utter shock from the intensity of these stories, creatures and events. That no other response is appropriate than amazing shock of disbelief how horrifying these accounts were. The Low Countries and the Netherlands specifically has been divided into states, or in Dutch, provincies, where only inside those locally some myths, sagas, creatures and beings are known. If at all, the older generation know this, meaning those that have been born up to the Second World War and some of the boomer generation. However, not many Dutchies do know their own mythology, folklore or sagas, besides one or two, such for example the tale of the Witte Wieven or the White Ladies. In the next couple of weeks I'll share my passion about those subjects, especially from my country, the Netherlands. What it is not. Even though the older tribes that used to live in the Netherlands came from the Frisians and the Germanic tribes, additionally they also mixed with other tribes or they came in contact with those they traded with. In this series and in future videos, however, we only focus on the Benelux or the Low Country folklore, meaning Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg. Are you thirsty for knowledge and sources not yet covered? Then, after this series you will surely wonder this. How is it possible for such a small country to have such a wide and vast amount of sources of lore? And also, as surprising, how many subjects have been unknown to even most inhabitants? Again, sit back and enjoy, as I will start and take you through some of the major known subjects, with some already briefly covered in shorts on our channel, given this is an introduction into Low Country folklore to answer the question what it's about. Kinderschrik, Demons of War, Wichery and Sagas of Devils, Christian, Crusade and Historic. Kinderschrik, or translated child terrors, were used by the Dutch to scare their children into submission, with some of these tales extremely horrifying. Horror stories long before the horror stories were placed into film. With then 11 and now 12 states, the Kinderschrik are many. The Zeeuwse tongensnijer or tongkadder is such an example of one, a being in the shape of a 50-year-old man or woman, that comes out of nowhere when a child would lie or stick out their tongue. It then would grab their tongue and cut it off. Another example is of the behavoir, one of the many bogeymen or many others, that makes you think who came up with these tales. And what are the lessons behind these? The Kinderschrik is a perfect example of the no beat around the bush, the no BS approach the Dutch are renowned for. Demons of War. By most old sources, writers used in their books, it is classified as follows: Earth, Fire, Water and Air. That makes you probably think of a certain cartoon series. However, these classifications long existed before that series was even a thought. When we talk about Earth Demons, we talk about beings in all shapes or form that mostly live on the ground and move over the ground. While they could have magical powers, they usually don't travel through the air. Examples of these are beings shorter, taller or equal to the size of human beings, at least when observed from a distance, as it is in most cases. For example, mostly all types of gnomes or leprechaun, or all types of giants. Next to these beings, similar in height as humans, for example, ghosts and Kinderschrik, such as the Barnum. While fire demons are specific as beings linked to the element of fire. Examples of these are dwaallichtjes, or in English, will-o'-wisps, fireball, fireman, or vuurman, St. Em's fire. Water can be seen as beings that live in the water. Examples of these are waterridder or water knight, mermaids, neckers, and terrors such as de giet met de lange arm or greed with the long arms, boelebak and boezemhoppert. Accounts of the Water Knight have been written down in a couple of accounts during Dutch folklore, where they can or were captured and placed on display and died after a couple of weeks due to not have eaten. If we take these stories at face value, this could be interpreted that these ridders or knights were vowed to kill themselves as soon as they would be captured, similar like how the Spartans were told, "Come back with your shield or on top of it." Since this could have been seen as the highest shame you could bring over your clan or state, to lose your shield or be defeated in battle, as is the case for most soldiers to be captured in the old days. And finally, air creatures and beings are classified as mostly those that can be observed traveling mostly through air. There are many stories of beings linked to the Wild Hunt, while accounts of the Wild Hunt are as plenty. About the subjects of Kinderschrik and Demons of the Four, see the shorts on our channel and the stories in the future to come, where we'll go deeper into the subjects, keeping the art of storytelling alive. If you watched the video this far, help us to keep the journey into the abyss alive. Please be so kind to like, comment and to share this video. As we're on the road to 1000 subscribers, we kindly ask you to support us by subscribing. Click on the notification bell to be updated when new videos are posted. Our sincere gratitude to you for joining us in our folklore journey. Now back to the video. Wichery. Before, during and after the Roman Empire tried to take over Greater Friesi and Lesser Friesi and really failed, many accounts of Wichery have been known to be active in the Low Countries. One can wonder why nowadays witches are depicted in the way they are, especially in media. if not to find a scapegoat for the unexplained issues rising mostly due to lack of information. For example, throwing feces into the street where everyone would be walking was a common practice. Also, a major reason why some men and women were sought out was due to them not getting sick, not taking into account that those who lived with cats would scare away the mice and rats that would actually carry the disease. On the subject of witches, we can go into many exciting parts. However, since this is still an introduction to Dutch folklore, for today we'll discuss shortly families, witches, wizards, and processes. Families. In the lower countries, as many other beings and creatures, the accounts of witches and wizards are numerous. According to the lore, in the lower countries there used to be numerous clans, great noble houses, and families of witches. The craft was taught from parents to their children and was kept in the noble houses and families. In most cases, when they would move, they would take their art with them. Then, when these families were prosecuted, most of them went into hiding, practicing these arts into mystery. Witches. There are many accounts that describe the behavior of witches, such as gatherings, their works, the animals that would accompany them, and those they would have placed under a spell. Accounts of these are the cat pits of Oude Deling, near Hoogsoeren, where witches would come together and dance in the shape of cats. Wizards. Mostly these tales include one specific person that, according to these stories, made a pact with the dark powers to gain everything to their heart's desire for some time. Example of Dutch lore are Dr. Faust, the Tell Knight, and many other stories. Processes and trials. During the 15th century, throughout all of Europe, witches' trials were the speak of the day. Basically, anyone you disagreed with, you could accuse of being a witch. In the Low Countries, this was also part of a... With it, any judgment and punishment could be anywhere from paying a small amount of 19 Rijnsgulden, calculated to today's value. 1 Rijnsgulden is now roughly €950, meaning more or less 18,050 euro or 19,762 US dollar. Most probably taken from the old Romans, the practice of torture for receiving any type of confession. Once this part was over, a person would be weighted on a, in Dutch, kaaswaag, or in English, cheese scale, or they would be tied to a stick to be placed on the water to see if someone could float. With some floating, not due to them being weightless, but with pockets of air still being present in their dress. In any case, in 1610 the final witch trial was set as it reads in the chronicles from a Dutch gentleman named Jacob Cats. You can see, after the court has given this verdict, all accounts of witchery have been driven from the land. This woman, that was hated by everyone. Hij ziet, nadat het hof dit vonnis had gegeven, scheen alle tovenarij als uit het land gedreven. Het wijf, dat voor een tijd door ieder werd verfoeid, bleef stil en zonder blaam van niemand ooit gemoeid. Sagas, sagas, and more sagas. As the numerous accounts of creatures, so are the endless folklore of stories. Most encounters are of any of the 3 types: Devil, Christian and Crusade, and thirdly, historic legends. Devil Sagas. The main theme in this case is when there were accounts as a devil in the shape of a human animal or more or less the presence of it. An example of this is the tale of the city Klokputten, or Bell Wells as you will. Here were strange sounds of ringing bells that they could hear, however, never was one bell seen. Christian and Crusade legends. The main theme in this case is, as the name suggests, it's about something to do with Christian or with the Crusades. An example of this is the Drowned Keep, the name of a place where once Schravendale Monastery lay. And finally, the historic legends. These stories have at least the sagas about hidden treasure, grave robbers, war, lineage and much more included in them. An exciting example is the right to succession of House Eck and Wiel, where two sisters tried to make their brother disappear to take over the ownership of the castle. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, as it is the first out of hopefully many. For future episodes, we'll dive deeper and surround us with all these exciting tales. Join us in our next week's episode as we'll cover big beings across Dutch legends and sagas. We look forward to see you back in the next one, and our gratitude for supporting the channel.